to tell you a story that was told to me by my grandpa Brass. And I'm sorry my voice is going. But what happened was, when the national park began to take over, my grandmother said the bears knew all about it, so they made our lives miserable. And that's a direct quote. And sure enough, the bears began to come, and they began to get their chickens. They had a cow in the barn and a horse in the barn. And one night, a bear came and got up on our Jersey cow. And it tried biting her. It was bit her in the neck, and it took its long claws and went down her back, trying to get her down to where he could kill her. Well, my grandpa went out and scared the bear off, and the cow ran off through the field. So the next night, my grandpa knew that the bear would probably be back. So he put the cow in the barn, and he put the door up, and he took big 2x4s and nailed them across the door. Well, when the bear came that night, Grandpa was in bed. He was in a nightshirt. And he heard the poor old cow just a-crying like everything. And so he went to the barn in his nightshirt with his gun. And whenever he got to the door, he saw where the bear had ripped off the 2x4s and knocked down the door, and he was in trying to get the cow. And of course, the poor old thing was just crying like everything. Well, whenever Grandpa showed up, he hollered at the bear, and the bear stood up on its hind legs and turned around and looked at my grandpa, who is all of 4'9". And so he was quite much larger than my grandpa. So my grandpa thought, well, I've got to do something or he's going to kill my cow right now. So what Grandpa did was, he said, and he'd go into this elaborate thing, and he'd say, and I took my gun and slowly aimed at the bear. And he said, I put my bead right in the middle of that bear's head, right between his eyes. And he said, I slowly, get these words slow, and I slowly pulled the trigger, and the gun went snap. It didn't go off. And he said, so since I didn't have anything to protect me, I headed to the house, and I slowly stepped back into the house. And this is, Grandpa would be silent, and then my grandmother stopped in. She said, yeah, slowly. Said, I looked out the window, and he said, I saw his nightshirt, a white streak, come across before the window, and he came in the door and slammed it and leaned up against it, and he says, the only time I've ever heard your grandpa cuss say, damn, it's after me. So that's a story about the bear. But there was a good thing. My grandpa had bought our place out in Dudley, and he moved out there in 1943. But he had his father-in-law and mother-in-law living out there in the house. So he went and took the cow, walked the cow out to the house. My grandmother, Mary, said, I didn't know what to do for the poor old cow because of all his bite marks and all of the places where the bear had scratched him. But she said, I did have some Watkins liniment. So she said, I poured that Watkins liniment all in them things. Can't you imagine the misery that poor old cow was in? But Grandpa walked her all the way from Cherokee Orchard out 321 highway that we know now, which was called Dudley Creek Road, and he turned on the Glades Road, and then the first road to the right is what we call, just a minute and I'll think of it, Hogpen Branch. That's where we lived. Later on it was called the Brass Holler because all the local people in the fire department named it that. So you go up Dudley Creek, you turn and you go up Hodgkins Branch, and then you turn right on Hogpen Branch of the Brass Holler. So that's where I live.